Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. All the characters in the story who enter into intimate relationships are over 18 years old. I was looking forward to the first day of the deer hunting season as I looked forward to Christmas as a child. It always falls on the first Monday after Thanksgiving in Pennsylvania and is something of a public holiday. Many schools are closing because a large number of students from the lower grades, as well as many teachers, will be in the pine forest on Monday and not in the classroom. At the last minute, a client from California insisted that I be free on Monday to check his account. I tried to dissuade him and even gently probed him about meeting with another representative of the company. The bill meant a lot to the company, which in turn made it very important to me. For the first time since I turned 12, I spent the first day of the deer season at work. I resigned myself to the fact that I would have to go to our hunting camp only on Monday evening, thus missing all the fun that we hunters had enjoyed the day before the hunt. This meant that I would fall behind in beer consumption and money lost in poker. With any luck, I'll be able to make up most of the lost time, beer, and money on Monday night. To that end, I packed my hunting gear into a pickup truck, threw a case of beer in the back seat, and set off on a 3-hour drive to our hunting camp in Bradford County. My wife Barb left me a note saying she was going out with a couple of her girlfriends and wished me luck on the hunt. I was not deceived. I knew that most wives were more than happy to see us guys away from home in the first week of deer season. It was a little vacation for them. I was an hour away from home when dusk turned to darkness. As I was watching the turns and bends of Route 6, I saw a service van in front of me hit a beautiful deer and threw it to the side of the road. When I braked, I saw another deer, a female, fly away from the van and fall next to the male. I pulled over to the side of the road and, shining the headlights of my pickup truck, looked at the unfortunate animals. The deer had beautiful antlers with a span of almost 2 feet. The female had much less. Both were as dead as last year's dandelions. I immediately made a decision. I took the tags out of my hunting jacket, filled them out and hung them on the deer. Then I loaded them into my truck, turned around and headed home. I had to get them somewhere where I could butcher them before their bodies got too cold. The longer I waited, the more difficult and harmful the process became. I stopped at a friend's old barn about 2 miles from home and turned on the outside light. Then I used a field lantern to illuminate both deer. While working on the male, I admired his horns. He was the cutest deer I've ever seen. It occurred to me that I have a great opportunity to win a big deer shooting pool at my hunting club. I was discussing a moral issue that could arise due to the fact that this is actually mining as a result of an accident and not mining during hunting. I quickly put aside all the doubts that were creeping into my mind. The rule is that a legally tagged deer has the largest antlers. I qualified. Besides, I've never been close to winning a hunting competition before. It was my time. I decided to return home to clean up and change my clothes. No matter how many times I butchered deer, I couldn't do it without getting blood on my shirt and jeans. I threw the butchered animals into the truck and headed home. My tags were filled out, and suddenly I had no reason to rush to the camp. By the time I get there, it will be too late to drink beer or play cards. At least I've fixed my tags on the animals properly, I thought, turning onto the dead-end road leading to my house. I've already seen a friend of mine get heavily fined for having a tag fall off his deer. The local district judge refused to admit that the deer had been properly tagged and that fate had intervened to rip the tag off the animal. The judge's name was Ray Parker, and he was proud to be known in our city as the hanging judge. He only handled minor legal cases and lawsuits worth less than $10,000, but he was a pompous ass. Barb was on friendly terms with the asshole's sister. However, I knew it wouldn't do me any good if I ended up in front of this jerk in court on charges of illegal hunting or for violating traffic rules. It was already past 11 when I pressed the remote control to open the door of my garage. The house was completely dark, so I assumed that Barb was already in bed and probably asleep. I was surprised to see that I couldn't stop by my garage. There was a brand new Lincoln in my place. Barb's Jeep was in its usual place. Walking around the Lincoln, I felt the hood, and it turned out to be cool. The car must have been parked there for some time. The keys were in the ignition. I quietly entered my house. He stopped and listened. The house was dark and very quiet. A little nervous, I went up the stairs that led to the bedroom. As I approached the master bedroom, I heard loud snoring. I've been sleeping with Barb for 25 years, and she's never snored. My stomach clenched. I went through the open door into the bedroom. The moonlight was enough to make out two human figures on my bed. And then I wondered why the hell I was sneaking around my damn house. I reached out, turned on the light, and waited for the damn storm to follow. No one even flinched. Barb was sleeping naked with her hand on the man. The man had a round beer belly and a lot of hair on his stomach and chest. I bent down and pulled the pillow off his face. It was the fucking hanging judge himself. Ray Parker was sleeping in my bed with my wife in his soft little hand. It's funny what happens in a person's head at such moments. I found myself most outraged that my wife invited such a pathetic asshole into her bed. Hell, she and I both knew a bunch of guys who could get a piece of her ass from time to time, and that would be preferable. Then I saw the empty wine bottles on the nightstand. Unsurprisingly, turning on the bedroom light didn't bother them at all. They must have gotten drunk and made love to a stupor. I went downstairs to get a deer hunting rifle. The next time that bastard wakes up, he'll be dead. Digging in the truck for a rifle and ammunition, I began to think about my situation. The husband is always the main suspect. Heck, even if someone else had shot that jerk, I probably would still have been convicted of murder just because I had such a strong motive. I should have been smarter. Then I noticed the horns sticking out over the side of my truck. I was pretty damn sure I didn't want to go to jail before I showed the other guys my deer and won the competition. Parker wasn't worth missing out on this once-in-a-lifetime pleasure. Anyway, Barb and I haven't been getting along very well lately. Why let this fool ruin my life? I quickly developed a plan B and started implementing it. I took my hunting tag off the doe that was in my truck and carefully put it in the big trunk of the Lincoln. Then I pulled out an old 12-gauge double-barreled sawn-off shotgun that I had bought from an old drunk a few weeks before his death, almost 20 years ago. I've never told anyone that I have it. It was an extremely deadly and illegal weapon. I wiped it off with an old rag so that there would be no fingerprints left and put it in the trunk, next to the doe. I even found a relatively new pillow and threw it in the trunk after tearing off the damn tag that warned that it was a federal crime to remove this fucking thing. Then I went into the house and filled the kettle with very hot tap water. I filled her a cooking syringe and returned to the deer in the trunk of the Lincoln. I poured some hot water into the gutted cavity and waited for about a minute. Then I used a syringe to suck out a fair amount of bloody water from the corpse and poured it into a bowl. Then I refilled the syringe from the deer's body and parked his truck around the corner of the house. I took out my son's goalie hockey mask, put it on, and returned to my rather noisy bedroom. When Barb was drinking, it was almost impossible to wake her up. My plan would have worked better if she had continued to sleep, but I was ready to flap my wings if the need arose. I took Parker's clothes off the chair in the bedroom and hid them in the closet. I noticed that his cell phone was still hanging on his belt. Then I put the bowl and syringe on the bedside table. I climbed onto the bed, placing my knees on either side of Barb. When I reached this position, I gave Parker a little push, but he continued to snore. I pulled the deer's heart out of the pouch I put it in when I butchered it. Sometimes the guys at the camp like to marinate them with beer and crackers. I've never had a taste for this particular organ. I opened the leather latch holding my hunting knife and drew the blade. Then I poured the blood from the bowl onto the sheets and onto Barb's chest. It's amazing how little blood it takes to make everything look like a crime scene. Barb reached out and lightly rubbed her left breast while the liquid dried quickly. Then she lowered her hand again. I emptied the bowl, put it back on the table, and took the syringe from the table. I held it over Parker's face and lowered it down, about 4 inches above his snoring mouth. Holding the heart in one hand, I squeezed it very hard and sprayed bloody water on Parker, some of which got into his mouth and made him suffocate. I quickly put down the syringe, took the knife, and began to run the tip over the heart in my left hand. I watched Parker out of the corner of my eye and giggled like an evil witch from the north. He hissed and suddenly straightened up abruptly. He looked at the heart in my hand and then at Barb's bloody chest, coughed and spat out the blood he had swallowed. He sighed convulsively. Then I turned the face covered by the mask to look at him. That was enough. He jumped out of bed and raced down the hall like a rocket, and all I had to do was get to the garage when he, completely naked, opened the door of his car. "You're next, motherfucker," I shouted as he slammed the door and stormed out of the garage. I went back upstairs and put Parker's clothes back on the chair. I took the mobile phone from him and put it in my pocket. He took the time to pull Barb's phone out of its notebook case and put it in his pocket too. Then I took a bowl and a syringe and put them in the sink along with the rest of the dirty dishes. He turned on the dishwasher and went to his truck, after turning off all the lights and closing the garage door. I was only a few miles down the road when I noticed a large Lincoln parked on the side of the road. It occurred to me that there must be some truth in the old theory that a couple of pounds of sugar in the gas tank of a car can lead to catastrophic consequences. Half a mile away from the car, I noticed what was obviously a naked man running along the highway. When I got closer, he turned and ran towards the shore, disappearing from sight. What kind of sick, crazy bastard is going to run naked in late November in northern Pennsylvania? I saw my duty clearly. I took Parker's cell phone, dialed 911, and reported the disturbing sight I had just witnessed. But I forgot to leave them my name. They will have to rely on the caller ID to determine who exactly made that call. Less than an hour later, I drove past the place where I saw 2 deer killed. I took Parker's cell phone and dialed my home number. The call went to the answering machine when I called for the first time. I hung up and dialed my number again. This time, Barb picked up the phone after the 4th ring. "Hello? Is something wrong?" Barb asked with that usual concern when you get a call in the wee hours. "Turn on the light and see what's left of your lover." I hissed into the phone. I waited for about 10 seconds, and then I heard a primal growl. Barb must have seen the blood and found someone's heart next to her in bed. At least that was the only thing that could have upset her so much. "You crazy bastard," Barb yelled into the phone. "You killed Ray. You'll never get away with it. I'm calling the police." The phone in my ear went silent. A smile flashed across my face as I thought about the story Barb was telling the police at this very moment. I drove up to the hunting camp around 4 in the morning. I hung my deer on a pole that we had for this purpose. I noticed that a couple of smaller deer were already hanging there, and I chuckled to myself when I entered the hut. When I came in, old Dan McGraw was already making breakfast. He was chosen to cook for the group. Then he can go hunting until the next lunch. He set a plate of bacon, eggs, and hash browns in front of me, and I began to eat. Tom Burton got out of bed and went outside to check the weather. He was gone for a minute or so, and then burst back through the door. "Where the hell did you get that deer, Dave?" "What is it?" he demanded. "It's the biggest one I've ever seen. This issue has caused mass migration through the front door. Few things give a hunter more hope than seeing a beautiful deer captured by someone else. It revives their hope and ignites their imagination." I explained how I had stopped by a friend's house at dusk the day before. I went out into the thickest thicket of bushes and mountain laurel that I could find, and came across a large male. Then, when he ran at full speed through the dense undergrowth, I chased him and fired once. The rest was history. While the other guys were pulling on warm clothes and putting on insulated boots, I undressed, climbed onto the bunk between the sheets, and fell fast asleep. A few hours later, something made me wake up. I opened one eye. There was a head in front of me wearing a police cap. "Mr. Reed? I hate to interrupt your hunt, but I have a few questions for you," he said calmly, not trying to hide his sarcasm. I stared at him for a few seconds, and then I sat down and scratched all the places that a person should scratch when he first wakes up. Then he pulled on his trousers and shirt and went to the coffee pot. "That's a nice deer with your tag," he began. "Where and when did you get it?" "On the territory of a friend." "The time is on the tag," I replied slowly. "Are the state police currently working for the Hunting License Commission?" "Let's get down to business, Mr. Reed. Your wife called the Springville police this morning. She claimed that you killed her lover, who turned out to be District Judge Ray Parker. She said that you cut out his heart and left it next to her on your bed. And to make the situation worse, Parker's car was found abandoned about a mile from your house. During a search of the car, they found a dead deer and a sawn-off shotgun in the trunk. There was also a pillow with the federal tag removed," the cop added after thinking about it. "Ray Parker's body has not been found yet. It's only a matter of time, Mr. Reed. Why don't you make it easier and tell us where you put Parker's body?" The policeman insisted. "Wow, and you guys are great," I grinned. "You've missed all this forensic bullshit, and you just want to get some dumb asshole to confess to murder when you don't have a body, motive, or weapon. The policeman picked up my hunting knife, which was in a plastic bag, and waved it in front of me, saying, "Jealousy is the most ancient motive. Not many men are very happy when they find out that their wife is a cheater. All we need is Parker's body, and we'll have everything we need to send you to jail for a long time." I'm more than a little disappointed with how various law enforcement agencies are handling this situation. I grinned at the surprised cop. You make an erroneous conclusion and then try to prove that this actually happened. Then you try to get a confession about what didn't really happen, rather than figuring out what actually happened and following the clues to where they lead. The last time I saw Ray Parker, he was running through the woods naked. I don't know why. Perhaps it was my ritual of thanking the hunting gods for giving me a magnificent trophy deer that made him feel slightly sick. This, as well as the fact that he saw me in the same room where he slept with my wife, could have caused him some kind of irrational fear caused by guilt, which in turn caused him to run out of the room naked, I suggested. If Parker is still alive, then why was there a heart in your bed? As I said, I have a ritual that I go through when I get the blessing to take a big deer. I kneel down in my bed and pick up a deer heart as a sign of gratitude. Then I put my heart in my place in bed as a sign of appreciation and respect for the gods of the hunt. I added with all the respect I could muster. At that moment, the policeman's radio rang. He went outside and spoke in a hushed voice for several minutes. Then he returned to the house. Ray Parker was found half an hour ago, wandering naked in the woods. 2 hunters found him and pointed in the direction of the road. I think once they realized who it was, they refused to give him any clothes or just take him out of the woods. They told him they came to hunt, not to collect garbage. The cop grinned. I thanked the officer when he returned my knife to me. He asked me to go to the local police station and give a statement. I promised him that I would do it as soon as I finished my week-long hunt, and climbed back into the bunk. On Friday afternoon, I stopped by the police headquarters. They were a little angry that I waited so long to make my statement, but it wasn't my problem. And I think Ray Parker accused me of making him believe that I cut out Barb's heart. He further claimed that I had planted a deer and a shotgun in his trunk and even ruined his Lincoln. I have the right to practice the worship of the hunting gods in my house, I told the policeman who asked me questions. If he's not satisfied with my rituals, he really should stay away from my marital bed. Then he won't come into contact with them. As for the deer and illegal weapons, I sat in the courtroom and heard him tell people himself when they were caught red-handed that anyone would lie to avoid responsibility for their actions. It's time for this dumb shit to step up to the common plate and take his medicine like a man. I don't know anything about the deer, or the gun, or his damn wrecked car. He has hundreds of enemies. Didn't the policeman tell me that he also had a pillow with the tag removed? This is a federal crime. Check it out. I was sleeping at home in my bed on Friday night. I felt the bed move and woke up to find Barb sitting on the edge of the bed next to me. She wasn't there when I went to bed. I suppose you know that I called our children and told them to lock the doors? I told them that you went berserk and killed my lover, and they should call the police if you show up on their doorstep, Barb began. I've heard something about it, since you mentioned it, I admitted quietly. You may even have heard rumors that I called the police and told them that you cut out Ray's heart and left it lying in our bed, Barb continued when I nodded in agreement. I suppose you've heard that Ray was charged with violating the Firearms Act and was fined for transporting illegal deer and hunting without a license, Barb continued. The assistant district attorney even tried to bring him in for removing the tag from the pillow, but I think it's legal after all. The pillow has already been sold. Not a damn thing, I replied in surprise. Can I remove these tags as soon as you pay for the pillow? I suppose the same can be said about mattresses? I never knew that. It seems obvious, Dave. It was a new pillow, and now it's covered in blood and some kind of filth, along with all the other bedding and pillows that were on this bed. You didn't have to resort to this trick. Ray has had enough problems with other cases he's been accused of. Knowing your character, I'm also surprised that he didn't have crack and prescription pills in his trunk. I have no idea what you're talking about, Barb. This Parker is a cool dude. I never would have thought he was so into illegal shit. I never knew he was making love to my wife. So how do I know what he's like? I replied. You won't be happy for long with that fool lying next to you, Dave, Barb complained. She was married a couple of times and couldn't keep her legs closed. She'll spread them for someone else when you turn away for the first time. Well, Barb, I've come to the conclusion that this is true for a lot of women. The difference is that I don't expect anything special from Doris. She's a fool, but she's great at making love. Just look at these balls, I exclaimed, pulling back the sheet that covered the sleeping woman. I told you a long time ago that if I ever caught you cheating, I'd be in your cousin's panties in the blink of an eye. You've been warned, so don't whine. It doesn't suit you, Barb. Ray Parker was the only man I cheated on you with, and then only a couple of times. By the time you get tired of Doris, we'll be even. Won't we, Dave? Until then, I'll sleep in the guest room. I stayed with Susan, but she, my only daughter, made it clear to me that she thinks I'm a terrible fool. I shouldn't have called our kids and told them to lock their doors in front of you. They would never have found out about my stupidity with Ray, Barb said thoughtfully. You've always had a rule: never scold me in front of our children. You made me do it myself. I lost the respect of my husband and children because of some pompous jerk. What are you going to do now, Dave? I'll wait until you leave the room, and then I'll wake up your cousin and make love to her, I replied with a grin.